Hey, so welcome back to Into Cycling. I've sort of been missing in action for a while. I just found I had a lot of work over the last few months, and even though I was taking the camera to some races, I wasn't able to uh, edit the videos and then upload them. So the last few races that I did, I didn't even bother bringing the camera. And I guess I was just going through a stage where I was really just focusing on myself and my own racing, and really wasn't interested in doing the race videos for a bit. But anyway, I plan to start that up again. Probably I'll start doing some later this year, for sure. We'll see how we go. But the reason that I've made this video is because I've had a bit of a transformation over the last few months. Going back, over a year or so, when I first, probably 2 or 3 years ago now, when I started racing with Eastern Cycling Club, I started in B grade. Actually found B grade, found the pace pretty easy. Was easily able to place or win in B grade. Did that a few times. Then finally went to A grade and was struggling to hang on. So I kept going through this thing over the last few years where I'd, do well in B grade, move into A grade, and just burnt out. I just could not sustain the pace. I couldn't sustain the training that I thought was required to be competitive in A grade. So I guess what this video is really going to be about is how I was able to actually stay in A grade, in the crits. I'm not quite there on the road yet. And how I did that at my age. I'm 56 now, so I'm not going to, I don't probably have too many years left of being able to do this at the level I'm doing it at the moment. But I guess I just wanted to share my experience. If there's anyone else stuck in that cycle of, going from B to A to B to A, hopefully what I'm going to share in this video might help you get over that hump. Anyway, so what I just quickly wanted to show is this is a video I took. This was at Rocco Drive. On this day, Matt Sherwin turned up, and this is where I could see there was a change in the way I was riding. So normally, if I did race A grade, I would sit in the pack, not, like to try and conserve energy. But on this day, as you'll see here, Matt Sherwin attacks, and I've just thought, I'm going to go for this. Let's see what I've got. And you can see there's Chris and Jim chasing him, and I thought I've still got more to go here, and I've actually just ridden across to him. Now, I just want to say, Matt Sherwin is like probably 50 levels above me. I'm not trying to compare myself to him. He's a way better rider than I am. What I am saying here, the point I'm trying to make is that I went from hiding in A grade to chasing down the fastest riders in the pack. So that's really the point I'm trying to make here. I'm definitely not comparing myself to him at all. As you see there, he's flicked the wrist, flicked the elbow for me to get across, but to take control, but no, that was it. This is another example. This was a bit more recent. So this is where I actually got on the podium in A grade. So again, something I would never do. So up until this point, I'd consistently been getting about 4th or 5th. Didn't quite have the sprint. On this day, I was lucky there was a couple of really fast boys like James, who didn't take part in this sprint, but there was Stuart up the road, who has been racing strong all season, and I do manage to get across to him at the finish line. So yeah, this was my first A grade podium. So, I haven't just got to A grade and barely hanging on. I'm actually in there in the mix, being competitive. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about here. So this is just to compare what it takes. So on the left there, that's a B grade race I did early 25. This is before I made some changes. In this race, I rode it pretty hard, attacked a lot, got into breakaways, was just consistently on the gas. I won this race. I took off solo on the last lap and no one was able to catch me. So it was a pretty strong B grade effort. Now this one here, this A grade race on the right, that's the one you saw where I bridged across to Matt. Now, I guess a couple of things to look out for here. So one of the big differences is there was an increase in FTP between these two races. So I had an FTP of 250 earlier on in B, and then got that up to 265. Now, with crit racing, I don't think it's all about FTP. Now, 265 is not a huge FTP at all. It's okay for my age. I think I've got a little bit more that I could get out, I could squeeze out, but it's not, it's definitely not a huge amount. And I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, so what I was saying, I think for crit racing, FTP isn't as important as maybe 1 minute power, 30-second power. It's more, I think those power zones are probably more important. So you can see there, another big thing is the normalised power for the race. So you can see for the A grade one, it's 278, B grade 242. So what that tells me is that the A grade race is a lot punchier. There's heaps of attacks and accelerations, and that's what's brought that up for that. Now, another interesting thing is look at the heart rates. No difference really. So within a few beats of each other, the maximum and average. So that tells you for the same effort, I was putting out way more power and being competitive. So that's just come from different ways of training and just changing a few things up, which I'll go into shortly. So just a bit of background about me for those that have sort of only known me for the last year or two. I'm definitely not one of those gifted athletes. Actually, far from it. I have to work really hard to, reach a high level of fitness. I've always loved riding my bike, even as a kid. And then in my mid-20s, I actually started doing some mountain bike racing. I had no idea about training. We didn't have the internet back then, so basically I would just go out and smash myself week after week. Ended up in a severe state of overtraining and developed chronic fatigue. I had recurring chest and throat infections. I ended up having to stop cycling for a while, which I was really upset about because I really loved riding my bike. So at that point would have been in the early 2000s when Lance Armstrong wrote his book. It's not about the bike. And I ended up, I'm not sure if someone gave me the book or I bought it, but I remember I was in one of those times where I was really sick. I had a fever, so I was in bed for a while, and I had this book and I was reading the book, and it's weird, I almost draw sort of a parallel between him being sick and making his way back to cycling and me, even though what he had was way worse. But anyway, so as I'm reading this book and I'm feeling, I'm thinking, I'd really, really love to get back into riding again. And so shortly after that, I actually was, I was referred to a really good doctor that helped me get through all this and all the illness. I had to do a massive change of diet, a lot of supplements for a while. Anyway, my health slowly came back and I started racing again, started racing crits at St Kilda Cycling Club. Again, I was a pretty mediocre rider, just sort of messing around in D, C grade. Just not that great. Again, sort of learned, I sort of ended up burning myself out again because not knowing how to train properly. It was at that point that I decided to do, Cycling Victoria had the coaching course. I decided to do the coaching course, learnt a little bit then, also read Joe Frill's book. So I started messing around with a couple of programs here and there. Was never really able to follow anything properly because, weekend would come along, you'd get on Beach Road with your mates, smash yourself, and then every time you get out on Beach Road, you're trying to race everyone. So again, I sort of ended up not in a massive burnout like previously, but I was struggling to really get anywhere. So for a while then, my son, he got into cycling, and he raced as a junior for a few years, and I ended up coaching him. So that was my real experience of putting into practice what I'd learned. And even though he was quite small for his age, he ended up winning quite a few races and bigger events like at sort of state and national level. For his size, he was actually a pretty good rider for a while, until he discovered girls and cars, and now he barely rides anymore. But anyway, so once he stopped, it was time again for me to focus on myself, and I started racing crits again, a few crits at Hawthorn, St Kilda, Carnegie. Again, not really getting anywhere, on and off. And then I think part of that frustration was, I was getting old and I'm racing, younger guys and stuff. So I came across Eastern Cycling Club. They're a masters racing club, and I think I sort of found my niche there. So I started racing B grade with them, and I found the pace in B grade pretty easy. And in my first races, I was able to place and win races. I thought, this is good. So I got bumped up to A grade. As soon as I went into A grade, it was like, whoa, this is a whole other level. And I was really struggling to hang on. And it was just, I just found the pace too hard. So I kept going back to B, back to A. And then eventually I did a few things to change my performance. Okay, so what did I do to turn things around? So I ended up using all the knowledge that I'd gained over the years, coaching my son, the coaching program, my own experience. I combined that with all the new information that was out online. There's heaps of great YouTube videos about training. I basically used all that, leveraged the power of AI, and created myself a training program. So I had to put in a fair bit of data beforehand about my age, how I was feeling, limiters, this and that, and I ended up with a pretty good program, and that accounted for proper recovery, and also identifying and fixing things that were holding me back. So I found that was probably one of the biggest things, the thing that had the most impact. So next, I focused more on recovery than I had previously. So making sure I was getting enough sleep, not riding as hard on days that I was tired, or if I'd recently raced or done a hard session. Really keeping track of that. And the way I did that was by tracking metrics like HRV, training readiness, and of course sleep, which I've already mentioned. So I bought a Garmin watch that helped me track all those metrics, and as you can see here on the screen, this comes out of Garmin Connect, and it shows you like your training readiness. So you can see there at the moment it's listed as moderate, so it looks at your sleep score, which at the moment was good. Recovery time, it says I'm pretty much recovered. HRV still on the low side there. I'm sort of just starting a bit of a break now, so after I've been racing for a few months. So it's showing balance, but it is on the low side. Acute load is low because I haven't been riding as much. Recent sleep scores have been fair. Again, that was mainly because I was starting to get quite burnt out towards the end of the season. I've just finished the Toughen Up series, and on the last round I was feeling a bit ordinary, and I actually got a puncture on the third lap, and to be honest I wasn't spewing that much because I was feeling terrible. Anyway, look, so even with all that, it's still possible to, I'm still sort of learning what my body can and can't take, even using a training program, but it's still, it did enable me to get through the season. Alright, so next. So I also started paying a bit more attention to nutrition, especially before a long or hard training ride, and definitely before races. I found sometimes on longer training rides I would run out of gas, I wouldn't eat enough, and I would also not bring food with me. So this is like, really this should be a given, but I don't know. For some reason I just kept messing that up. So yeah, so just definitely making sure I've got enough. I tend to put sugar in my water bottles now, normally about 60 grams, just to get me through a crit, just to make sure I've got enough. I tend to struggle eating in the mornings, so sometimes I just just have sugar instead. I do find it does tend to make me put on weight, so not sure if other people are finding that problem with having sugar. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Now this one was a big one for me. Sure, we've all done it. I've been doing it since the early days of riding. You get out on a group ride. We normally have a Saturday morning gravel ride out here at Warburton, and there's quite a few fast riders, and it's always a bit of a smash fest, so it's hard to not try and get involved. The ego normally takes over and you start racing everyone. So I have learnt to sort of hold that back and try not to get involved, unless for some reason I've got that in my training program. So for some reason, if I'm not racing on that weekend, then I'll allow myself to ride a bit harder on that group ride. And it used to happen all the time. You go down Beach Road and you sort of end up in a group and start racing everyone, and before you know it, that's your race day done. I just found that has more impact now as I've gotten older. When I was younger, I could do that and still then back up and race the next day. And look, I still can race the next day, but I find I'm just not as good. So there you have it. I guess these are the things that I've found that really improved my ability to keep progressing and enabled me to consistently race A grade and actually become a half decent A grade rider. So I think the top one was probably the one that had the most impact, having a structured training plan. And I mean, they all sort of tie in. Having a structured training plan means you are more focused on recovery. You also tend to pay more attention on your metrics. And the other two, they're really just things that you do also need to be aware of. One other thing I forgot to mention about nutrition, my post-race or post-hard training session nutrition sometimes wasn't fantastic either. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you got anything from it, like or share it. I'd be interested to hear from other riders, and I know there's a few of you out there, because there's a few other riders that I know we've been bouncing back and forth from B to A and so forth. So if there's anyone else out there, share your experience, tell me what you're doing, what's working, what's not working. Hit me up on the comments if you want a bit more information of what I did as far as my training plan. And also happy to help someone out with their training plan. If there's anyone out there that was struggling with the same thing, let me know. I'd be keen to see if I can help. Anyway, thanks again, guys. See you out on the road. Having a little bit of a break from racing, but I should be back soon in a few weeks. Okay, bye for now.